The Galactic Dominion had conquered 100 worlds, razed civilizations to ash, and bent entire species to their will. They were a war machine, efficient, merciless, and absolute. Yet, standing in the bridge of their flagship, surrounded by towering reptilian warriors, Captain James Ghost McAllister only felt the quiet certainty of a man about to bring it all crashing down. His hands were bound behind his back, thick alien restraints biting into his wrists, but his posture remained upright. Blood trickled from a gash on his temple, staining the collar of his black tactical suit, yet his ice-blue eyes remained sharp, calculating. Across from him, Zalvath, supreme warlord of the Xeric forces, watched him with the smug amusement of a creature that had never known fear. The warlord stood over 8 feet tall, his exoskeletal armor gleaming in the dim light, violet-hued eyes glinting with arrogance. "You are an anomaly, human," Zalvath said, voice guttural and thick with condescension. "Your kind should not be so difficult to break. You lack strength, lack speed." And yet, his massive claws tapped against the command console, the sound sharp and deliberate. "You persist." Ghost tilted his head slightly, as if considering the statement. His body ached from the beating, his ribs throbbed from an earlier encounter with a Xeric enforcer, but pain was just another data point to be managed. His focus remained on the room, the exits, the positioning of the guards, the weapons within reach. Every breath, every flicker of movement, was another piece of the puzzle. "You talk too much," Ghost finally said, voice steady. "That's the thing about all you Dominion types. You love to hear yourselves talk." A low growl rumbled through the chamber. The surrounding Xeric warriors shifted, their thickly plated tails scraping against the metallic floor. Zalvath, however, only smiled, revealing rows of serrated teeth. "I admire your defiance," the warlord mused, stepping forward. "But it is pointless. Your people are scattered, your forces crushed. You are alone." Ghost didn't answer. Words were wasted on creatures like Zalvath. Instead, he let his gaze flicker past the warlord, toward the massive viewport overlooking the battle-scarred remains of an Earth colony below. Fires still burned across the ruined cities, plumes of smoke curling into the void. They thought humanity was broken. They were wrong. A faint tremor ran through the ship, a rhythmic vibration Ghost had been waiting for. Right on time. His lips curled in the slightest smirk. Zalvath noticed. "Something amuses you, human." Ghost exhaled, rolling his shoulders as much as the restraints would allow. "You ever hear the term force multiplier?" Zalvath's brow furrowed, confusion flickering across his alien features. The tremors grew stronger, the distant thud-thud-thud of impact reverberating through the hull. The guards turned, uncertain. Then the alarms began to wail. Ghost moved. With a sharp twist, he dislocated his left thumb, slipping free of the restraint just as one of the distracted guards turned toward him. Before the warrior could react, Ghost drove his boot into the Xeric's knee joint, sending the alien sprawling with a bellow of pain. He ripped the fallen guard's sidearm from its holster, a sleek plasma pistol, heavier than human designs but serviceable. Without hesitation, he fired. The first shot tore through the nearest guard's throat. The second found a target in another warrior's eye socket, spraying blackish-blue ichor across the consoles. The bridge exploded into chaos. Ghost moved like a specter, weaving between the towering warriors, using their size against them. A Xeric lunged, razor claws slicing through the air, but Ghost ducked low, rolling beneath the strike and firing upward. The shot caught the alien under the jaw, snapping its head back with a sickening crack. Zalvath roared, seizing a massive blade from his belt and charging. Ghost sidestepped at the last second, spinning behind the warlord and kicking him forward into the command console. The impact sent sparks flying, alien symbols flashing red. A deep, rumbling explosion shook the ship, closer this time. The automated defense turrets outside the bridge activated, whirling to life just as the reinforced blast doors buckled under an external force. Ghost grinned. Right on schedule. The warlord snarled, spinning to face him. What have you done? Ghost wiped a smear of blood from his lip, pistol still raised. You thought I came alone. The blast doors shattered inward as breaching charges detonated, and through the smoke and debris, the unmistakable silhouettes of SAS operatives stormed into the bridge, weapons raised, moving with the lethal efficiency of trained killers. The Dominion had made a fatal mistake. They hadn't taken just any prisoner. They had taken an SAS operative, and now they were about to pay the price. Smoke curled through the bridge, mingling with the stench of burnt flesh and scorched metal. Ghost moved with lethal precision, dropping to a crouch as his team poured through the shattered blast doors, their black combat suits nearly indistinguishable in the dim emergency lighting. The Dominion's arrogance had given them the element of surprise, and now the once unshakable bridge was a slaughterhouse. A Xeric warrior lunged, its obsidian blade cutting through the haze. Ghost sidestepped, grabbing the creature's wrist and twisting with brutal efficiency. Bones cracked, the alien howled, and Ghost drove his stolen sidearm into the base of its skull. One sharp pull of the trigger, and its body crumpled. Sergeant Kane's voice crackled through his earpiece. We're in position. Exfil in 6. Make it 5 if you don't fancy dying up here. Ghost fired 2 more shots, taking down another guard before responding. Copy that. Prep for rapid evac. Zalvath, the supreme warlord of the Xeric, still stood, towering over the carnage with a mixture of rage and disbelief. His forces, his throne room, his unshakable command, all crumbling before his eyes. His claws flexed. You think this is victory? He growled, voice thick with venom. This is nothing. The Dominion does not falter. We do not bow. Ghost advanced, his movements controlled, unhurried, gun raised. Funny thing about war, he said, it's not about who bows first. It's about who's left standing. The warlord's lips curled, revealing serrated teeth. Then, with a flick of his clawed hand, he activated something on the central console. A low, pulsing hum filled the air, and the ship trembled violently beneath their feet. Kane's voice snapped in Ghost's ear. Bloody hell, they're locking down the hangars. We'll be stuck here in less. A tremor cut him off. The bridge's viewport flickered, revealing a harrowing sight. Outside, the Dominion fleet was repositioning, their weapons priming. They weren't just securing the hangars. They were preparing to annihilate the flagship itself. Ghost cursed under his breath. This wasn't just an execution. It was a purge. Zalvath grinned, his bloodied frame looming in the flashing red light. If I am to fall, I will take you with me. Ghost exhaled slowly. Every fiber of his being screamed for him to put a bullet between the warlord's eyes. But that wouldn't solve their problem. They needed to get out fast. He glanced at the console. A ship this size had emergency override protocols. Dominion officers were paranoid enough to keep fail-safes in case of mutiny. If he could access them. Kane's voice cut in. Ghost, we need a bloody exit plan now. Ghost's eyes flicked to Zalvath, then to the nearest interface. A plan took shape. Risky. Reckless. But it was the only one they had. He turned to his team. Secure the doors. I mean 90 seconds. Without hesitation, Kane and the others moved, setting up cover positions as the last remaining Dominion forces attempted to rally. Bullets and plasma fire exchanged in lethal bursts, the air thick with heat and the scent of ozone. Ghost sprinted to the console, overriding security locks with practiced efficiency. Dominion systems were complex, but war had a language all its own. He bypassed the standard protocols, searching for the command he needed, something to force the ship's escape pods to eject remotely. Zalvath saw what he was doing. The warlord roared, launching forward in a last desperate attempt to stop him. Ghost barely turned in time. The hulking alien crashed into him, sending them both sprawling across the console, weapons scattering. Pain lanced through Ghost's ribs. He gritted his teeth, grabbing at the warlord's arm before the clawed hand could crush his throat. Zalvath was stronger, far stronger, but Ghost had never relied on brute force. Instead, he shifted his weight, allowing the warlord's momentum to carry them both over the edge of the console. They slammed onto the floor, and in that split-second opening, Ghost seized a fallen combat knife and drove it deep into Zalvath's exposed side. The warlord howled in pain. Ghost twisted the blade, feeling the resistance of thick muscle and exoskeletal plating. Zalvath lashed out, but Ghost rolled away, ignoring the searing pain in his ribs. He grabbed his pistol, leveling it at the warlord's head. The console behind them beeped. The override was complete. Ghost tapped his earpiece. Hangar pods, forced launch. Get to the nearest exit. Kane responded immediately. You better be behind us. Zalvath struggled to his feet, his breaths ragged, dark blood pooling beneath him. He looked at Ghost, and for the first time, there was no arrogance in his eyes. Only fury. Ghost pulled the trigger. The warlord's body collapsed. He didn't wait to watch. He turned, sprinting toward the doors as the ship trembled once more, this time from within. The escape pods were ejecting, the automated fail-safes overriding all other commands. The Dominion fleet wouldn't waste time asking questions. This ship was dead, and they needed to be gone before it took them with it. The corridors of the Dominion warship buckled under the force of internal explosions, sending fire and debris through the air as Ghost sprinted forward. Every breath burned, every muscle screamed, but he pushed forward, weaving between the bodies of fallen Xeric warriors and his own dwindling cover. The escape pods had ejected, yet the ship remained in a state of freefall, power fluctuations surging through the hull as Dominion fleet weapons locked onto their dying flagship. It wasn't just a loss for the Xeric. It was an execution. The Empire would rather obliterate its own ship than let it fall into enemy hands. Ghost, where the hell are you? Kane's voice crackled in his earpiece, barely audible over the chaos. Ghost gritted his teeth. On my way. The last docking bay was their only chance. His team had already moved ahead, securing a transport shuttle buried in the wreckage of a secondary hangar. If he didn't make it to them in time, there would be no second attempt. A tremor rocked the ship, slamming Ghost against the bulkhead. Metal screeched and groaned. He could feel the artificial gravity fluctuating, the deck tilting beneath his feet. A deep rumble echoed from the lower levels, probably the core failing, heat venting in lethal bursts. Then came the voices, a distorted growl from his left. He spun, raising his pistol. A Xeric enforcer, armor scorched, stood in the flickering light of a damaged conduit. The alien's breath came in ragged heaves, its bloodied claws flexing as it lurched forward. A survivor, a zealot who refused to fall, even in the face of certain death. Ghost didn't hesitate. One shot, clean through the skull. The body collapsed. No time to waste. He pushed forward, vaulting over a broken railing, his boots hitting the lower deck hard. The blast doors ahead had begun to close, the Dominion's last-ditch containment protocol sealing off sections of the ship to slow the inevitable. He wouldn't make it in time. His gaze flicked upward. The overhead maintenance ducts ran the length of the corridor. If he could get into the shaft before the doors sealed. Ghost holstered his weapon, leaped, and caught the edge of the vent's grated frame. With a grunt, he pulled himself up, boots scraping against the wall for leverage. Just as he forced his way inside, the blast doors slammed shut beneath him, sealing with a final, echoing clang. For a moment, there was only darkness. Then he moved. Crawling forward, he navigated through the narrow space, feeling the heat intensify as the ship's core edged closer to failure. Sweat dripped down his face. The Dominion's structural integrity alarms blared somewhere beyond the walls, distant but urgent. He reached the next access point and braced himself. With one forceful kick, the vent cover buckled and crashed to the floor. Ghost dropped down after it, landing in a crouch. The docking bay was in sight. Beyond the flickering force field at the hangar's edge, space stretched endlessly, punctuated by the hulking silhouettes of Dominion warships repositioning for their final barrage. His team's transport shuttle idled on the far end of the hangar, its engines warming up, exhaust plumes dancing against the broken deck. They were waiting for him. Ghost ran. Ahead, Kane stood at the shuttle's open hatch, rifle raised. "Move, damn it." A sharp whine filled the air. Ghost turned mid-stride, instinct taking over. A Zurich shock trooper, one of the last defenders, a soldier clinging to duty, stood atop a collapsing cargo platform, leveling a plasma rifle. Ghost's body moved before his mind did. He dove. The first shot burned past him, scorching a trail through the deck. He rolled, drew his pistol, and fired as he came up to one knee. 2 rounds struck the alien's chest. The third went through its throat. The Zurich choked, its weapon slipping from its grasp. It tumbled forward, disappearing into the abyss beyond the ruptured hangar doors. Ghost didn't stop. He reached the shuttle just as Kane hauled him inside, the hatch sealing behind them. "Punch it," Kane barked. The pilot didn't need to be told twice. The shuttle's thrusters roared, propelling them forward just as the Dominion flagship began to break apart. Through the viewport, Ghost watched as the once mighty warship fractured, detonations ripping through its spine. Chunks of molten metal spiraled into the void, swallowed by the cold silence of space. They were clear, but the Dominion fleet was still out there. Ghost exhaled, steadying himself. This wasn't over yet. The shuttle trembled under the strain of evasive maneuvers, its hull groaning as plasma fire streaked past. The Dominion fleet was in pursuit, their warships maneuvering with ruthless precision, cutting off every escape route. The cockpit displays blared with warnings, shields weakening, fuel reserves dipping into critical levels. Ghost braced himself against the bulkhead, eyes scanning the chaos beyond the viewport. "They're not letting us go," Kane growled, gripping the back of the pilot's chair. "They're hunting us like dogs." The pilot, Calloway, gritted his teeth. "They've tagged us, locking in with targeting solutions. If we don't break line of sight now, we're done." Ghost's mind raced. The Dominion wouldn't stop at destroying their shuttle. They wanted to make an example of them. If they were captured, execution was the best-case scenario. The worst? Being paraded before the Empire, a warning to any species foolish enough to challenge their reign. That wasn't happening. He turned to the navigation panel, fingers flying over the interface. "What's the closest celestial body?" Calloway frowned, but scanned the charts. "There's a gas giant within range. Strong gravitational pull, thick atmosphere. If we can slingshot around it, we disappear," Ghost finished. "Or burn up trying." Kane snorted. "Sounds about right." The shuttle shuddered as another impact rocked its frame. The Dominion's pursuit ships were closing in, their formation tightening. Ghost could almost see the pilots on the other side, their reptilian eyes locked onto their prey. "Do it," he ordered. Calloway yanked the control stick, sending the shuttle into a sharp descent. The G-forces pressed them into their seats as they plummeted toward the gas giant's swirling storms. The Dominion ships followed, their fire lighting up the void. The gas giant's atmosphere consumed them like a beast swallowing its prey. Winds howled against the hull, turbulence rattling every joint. The pressure mounted, systems flickering under the strain. Outside, the world was chaos, a vortex of shifting clouds and violent electrical storms, obscuring sensors and disrupting enemy locks. Ghost exhaled. This was their window. Cut thrusters. Let the storm take us. Calloway hesitated but complied. The engines powered down, leaving them drifting, silent, indistinguishable from the swirling debris. Their pursuers hesitated at the storm's edge. The Dominion feared the unpredictable. They relied on control, precision. This was madness to them. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then, slowly, the Dominion ships began to pull back, reluctant to risk their vessels in the storm's wrath. The pursuit was over. Kane let out a breathless laugh. Hell of a gamble. Ghost leaned back against the bulkhead, closing his eyes for a moment. They had escaped, but the war was far from over. This was only the beginning.